I'd like to call to order the SAU board meeting for May 21st, 2019. Mrs. Belcher, could you take the roll, please?
Brian Boyle.
Here.
Lee Doobie. Kim Farah.
Here.
Jason Giard.
Here.
Sheila Lowe's.
Here.
Sarah Mockamer.
Here.
Sean O'Neill.
Here.
Caitlin Parnell.
Here.
Kristen Savage. Susan Sherman. Jennifer Silva.
Here.
David Smith.
Here.
James Sweeney.
Here.
Karen Yusenka. Seated at the board with the board this evening are the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Earl Metzler, and CFO Business Administrator, Jeffrey Dowd.
Could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Sean, would you like to lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't see any delegates or individuals.
There are none.
Thank you. So we'll move on to approval of the minutes from the...
Point of order, Madam Chair, as I like to actually call for weighted voting for the Timberlane School Board for the rest of the evening.
Okay. Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Brian seconds. The board, our Timberlane board needs to vote on that motion. All in favor of the motion, raise your hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All against? 1, no abstentions. The motion passes 5-1, so we'll move to weighted vote and,
Madam Chair.
oh, Mrs. Parnell.
I'd just like to put into the record that I object to the use of weighted voting. It's an abuse of this tool.
Thank you. Moving on to the approval of the meeting minutes. Is there a motion on the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes as printed.
Second.
Mrs. Silva seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Nine in favor. All those against? Abstain? 1 abstention. The minutes are approved. Moving on to number 6, the auditor's report. Mr. Dowd?
Yes, the audit report, I believe, will be along shortly. I believe that we'll have at least a semblance of the report coming through this week. We have our actuaries completing the other post-employment benefits analysis, which is a 3-year cycle. That's up. And as soon as that's complete, I believe that's the final piece to have our report complete.
Okay, I asked this question at the withdrawal committee in regards to the audit. Why is it, we are now in May of 2019 and have not received the 2018 audit? Was there something to do with the withdrawal and the actuary that was involved in this?
There was. So the there's a line on the SAU financials, which is other long-term liabilities, a portion of which is made up of our other post-employment benefit liabilities, and that is under, for SAU, a 3-year review. This is the audit cycle in which that other post-employment benefit actuary valuation is up. In doing so, because it's only done once every 3 years, it is an extensive process. In doing so, knowing that there had been and will be there is a withdrawal planning committee reviewing a withdrawal or the feasibility of withdrawal from the district, that number is a fairly important number to have as current. So hoping that we would have an idea as to when that committee would have some idea on feasibility. The report was sent out in connection with that, so that it would not have to be performed twice, so that we can get an idea as to what those liabilities are going to be in order that they may be stated for the withdrawal committee's, I assume, necessary review of liabilities.
So the vote on the withdrawal was not till March of 2019. Did you, were you directed to delay the audit in terms of the withdrawal? Because I see them as two entirely separate entities. The SAU withdrawal, or the Timberlane withdrawal and the SAU audit. I understand what you're saying about the actuary and the 3-year or the post-employment benefits, but I just don't see these as two entities that should be intertwined.
My goal.
Did you just,
Go ahead.
I just don't understand why the withdrawal vote got intertwined into the SAU audit, which is now,
Fieldwork was completed in the time frame around March, and I believe the vote was around the same time, and it made sense to see if that vote would come through favorably. As you know, when the withdrawal study or planning committee was approved on the ballot, there was no money associated with that. And as we only do this valuation once every 3 years, it's my job to see that we can best utilize the resources of the district, and it's a better use of resources in order to have that analysis combined.
okay, I won't belabor this point too much, but what sort of post-employment benefits are we looking at here that pertains to the Timberlane withdrawal?
Well-
That is reflected in the SAU audit?
Well, the SAU, actually all entities, you must have it for your town, don't you? I would think. And I'll ask Sean, is that something you have for your town?
We're not here to talk about my town.
No. Is it something that's familiar to everyone? I'm wondering.
Yeah, there's also, but the audit,
Got it.
I agree that the audit should, these actuaries, all this stuff, should not be part of the SAU55 audit. It should have been done with all the other audits, and the outcome of the SAU with actuaries, or whatever you want to do. You can't use the excuse that, because the withdrawal study committee is the reasoning why.
That's fine. I mean, we would have to undertake a second review on these things, which I guess perhaps we should have done. But that, to me, if we have an opportunity to leverage those resources together, that's my job, is to make the best resources of the SAU. The SAU is not funded to have another study done next year. So we do have retirement benefits, or benefits that go along incidental to service to the district, supplement to health insurance in the form of a cash benefit on an annual basis. That's part of the other post-employment benefit retirement. And there is also an ability of retirees to remain on the district plans. And even if there's not an option, even if the district is not subsidizing the payment of those premiums, the fact that we have a potential pool or a pool available to join our plans, which may be at a higher risk threshold than what our normal age classification would be on these plans, causes us to have an indirect, if you will, impact on rating. So in other words, if we had our staffing between perhaps a certain age group, we would have a certain rating. But where our employees or our retirees can pay to participate in that plan, they in turn end up adding that much additional risk to the risk pool itself, and there is an inherent cost to that.
Brian, can you,
Okay, so the audit will reflect the opinion of that firm as of June 30th, 2018?
Correct.
So whatever these long-term liabilities SAU55 has, that's what they're issuing their opinion on, saying this is of the 13, 14 staff members, this is our opinion, this is what you would, this is your liability
Right.
for those individuals. So it really isn't tied, if you will, to a withdrawal, because if the withdrawal happens, it's 2 years out anyway. So it's a snapshot, an audit of June 30th, 2018. Maybe all those people will be there June 30th, 2020, maybe, who knows? So they just, is
So
this
would be
something that's been on the audit before?
It's in the audit, it's been the audit in the past several audit cycles. This is at least our second actuarial review for that. And they have an ability to project forward when they do their analysis. And it's that projection forward that would be the basis of I would imagine, the withdrawal committee wanting to, or needing to, include as part of their analysis as to exiting.
Well, the projection forward is the liability.
Well, not at.
In other words, if
June 30th,
someone's
18.
earned benefits, that's what's owed.
Correct, but not at June 30th, 18, it would be at June 30th, 19, 20, whenever it is that you're going to be projecting,
But their opinion, because it's that fiscal year, is based on,
it gets updated. It's not, in fact, even with Timberland's audit, we had an update this cycle to our other post-employment benefits liability. So they only do the study for Timberland and for Hampstead once every 2 years. For SAU, it's once every 3 years, but we did have an update this past cycle for Timberland as well. The liability doesn't go on and then stay the same. The liability can be, is updated on an annual basis typically, but it's a much shorter form of update.
well, based on who's on the payroll. Obviously, if the person along the payroll, the liability's not there.
It's participation, it's our, any assumptions that have changed in the actuarial world in terms of what health cost projections are in the future, based on participation in the plans, experience. So they do go through and they do update. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it's quite involved. It's not the 13 employees from the SAU, it's those employees who are participating in the plan, available to participate in the plan currently. So there is an idea, there is a snapshot of the current employees, but really they're looking more at the employees who are there participating in the program currently.
okay, so you think now, when you anticipating that the audit is going to be complete?
Well, I've asked for, just to send a draft through, knowing that those other post-employment benefits wouldn't be retired, wouldn't be included for the retirees if they, I don't anticipate that be done before the end of the week, but I've asked for a draft just to show where we're at. I said, we can look at these statements without those necessary updates. I think that you all would be interested in what it looks like without those other long-term liabilities being updated generally. So I believe we should have something for your Thursday night meeting, for your meeting on Thursday.
Yes.
Good.
The other issue is that we don't have, if the SAU does not have the audit, and the withdrawal committee would like to see the 2018 SAU audit, we're going to have a problem if it has not yet been approved by the SAU board, and the withdrawal committee needs to have its work done by the end of July. We're going to have to call another SAU meeting in order to get the SAU audit approved so that the withdrawal committee can take a look at it for their work that needs to, we're under a timeline here.
What is it that the SAU withdrawal committee would need from the audit that they wouldn't already have from our stated financials?
The audit itself. Why would we need that?
They have the fiscal year ended.
Because last year we had both a material weakness and a significant deficiency in the audit. I think the withdrawal committee might like to see how the financial audit of the SAU compares from 2018 to 2017, because I think it may pertain to the operations of the SAU and what the withdrawal committee feels pertains to the SAU operations.
Well,
Right.
I think also, Jeff, as you pointed out, when you brought up that, considering what was on the ballot, I would think that committee would want to see what the numbers the auditors come up with. I would think that'd be part of your committee's analysis.
Yeah, and when you look at the numbers, if you break them up into two different, portions, if you will, or three balance sheet items, of course, but then we have all the current items which we state, and I believe we have as part of the budget and the actual reporting, and then we have the long-term liabilities section as well.
Would the SAU board have an issue with the withdrawal committee looking at a draft of the audit before the SAU approves or looks at the audit? I'm just looking at timelines here. Any comment on that? Any issue with that?
I think he could submit as a draft, because it's not really, that's up to Campo, I would think.
Well,
And if
but
you-
typically the SAU has to approve the audit before it can go out publicly. Jen?
Have we posted the audit as a draft in the past?
No. I think it's been available in the past. I think it may have been posted perhaps by board members in the past, but I don't think that we've posted it as a draft in the past. But I don't think that it would, let me put it this way, if we have a draft of it coming through, the general, everything you would see in the audit for current expenses, current balance sheet items would be there. The final, I believe, would be out at the latest, early next week. I don't recall ever there being a board that did not accept an audit. I'm not sure what would happen if the audit is not accepted. I'm not sure if that goes back to the audit firm to say, hey, sharpen your pencils, come up with something better.
I'm not concerned about the board accepting the audit. I'm concerned that typically the audit is not released until the board accepts the audit.
Fair enough.
And the withdrawal committee needs to see the audit. So this board probably is going to have to meet again, not on the 23rd, because I don't think we're going to have the audit. We're going to have to meet sometime in June in order to get that audit approved, so the withdrawal committee can take a look at it. Jen?
I'm wondering if this board would feel comfortable if we're going to release it for the withdrawal committee to review, if we could release it to this entire board to review, even if we haven't formally met to accept it, but just so that everybody at least can see it.
It will then become a public document, because the withdrawal committee's folders are public. We don't have a means to,
I would just want to make sure that it wasn't just you and I
oh,
that had
right.
access to that, that everybody on this board would have access to that.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm trying to figure out how to approach this. Earl?
I think, I agree with your first point, that in the event that you don't have it on Thursday, I really do think you should meet to accept it, because having something out that the board has not yet accepted is probably not a good practice, in my opinion.
Okay, well, I guess we're going to have to plan for a meeting in June in order to accept that audit.
Is the audit in a finalized form except for these actuarial updates?
Yeah, as far as I can tell, I think it'd be in final form, with the exception of those other long-term liabilities.
I would think releasing it as a draft as it currently resides, minus that should be something that you guys could use at the withdrawal study committee to do some assessment. And then it would be backfilled with the final version when it is, and of course, updated and accepted by this board.
So you're suggesting that the audit be released publicly as a draft before this board has a chance to look at it? Sue's looking a little
think that's a good
taken aback. I don't either.
I don't think that's a good idea.
Do you think somebody in this board is gonna add something to that audit that's gonna change an
I have no
opinion
idea,
of an
because I
auditor?
haven't seen the audit.
It is what it is.
Yeah, we've talked about that term of accepting. It's, you're either, it's here, or it's not here. There's no, we don't like it, take it back and do it again. It's not that kind of a thing. It's, right? It's,
Right,
you
well,
get it.
I think you came in late, so here's
But
the problem.
just to accept the draft,
Give Sue the Reader's Digest version.
Let me give you the Reader's Digest
Yes,
version.
I'm sorry I'm late,
That's
but
all right.
life goes on, you.
No, I'm looking for your opinion on this. The 2018 audit is not yet ready for the SAU.
Okay.
The withdrawal committee needs to look at the 2018 SAU audit. Unless this board accepts the audit, the withdrawal committee can't do it. So I'm now looking at having to have another SAU meeting to approve the audit so the withdrawal committee can look at it. Because the withdrawal committee needs to be done essentially by the end of July to prepare for a public hearing, should they move forward. So they have a very short window.
I think you should have a meeting in June.
Okay, well, okay, I guess that's where we're
I
headed
mean,
then.
it's my opinion, I wouldn't,
Does anybody over on the Hampstead side have any comments or opinions on that? I guess we're gonna have to plan for a meeting in June. Dr. Metzler.
If it pleases the board, I think, I don't have my calendar in front of me. I do believe we have a withdrawal committee meeting the 19th of June, or the 18th, that week.
I don't know if we've gone out that far, have we?
I don't
It's
think-
28th,
We didn't go up, we were planning more meetings.
Tuesday after Memorial Day,
No,
Oh, we had it the 28th, but that's,
There
there
was
must
one in
be.
June too, I thought.
the 4th and the
June 4th.
And then-
16th or 18th, I
And the 8th, the 4th and the 18th of
The
June.
18th, so the 18th was really the date in my mind that I was just thinking about making sure that this board had accepted the audit, and then the withdrawal committee on the 18th would have it no later than the 18th of June. Hopefully sooner, hopefully much sooner, but I think that that's, I think, as far out as you can go is waiting for that audit. And that may be too far.
Well, it's
But-
further it's further than I would like to go, because I know the withdrawal committee is working on the financials, so, I mean, I don't see how we're gonna get it before the 18th of June.
Well,
When-
I'm looking at, from a practical standpoint too, with Memorial Day, and then finding dates
no.
and trying to get this group back together, and then you approving it before it gets to the withdrawal. That seems to be
Okay,
not
so,
ideal, but it seems to be the timeframe that might work.
okay, so, we're gonna have to plan for another, SAU meeting sometime before June 18th, so that the audit can be approved, so that the withdrawal committee can take a look at that.
So is anybody interested in the idea of the draft minus these long-term actuarial reports that's basically an addendum to the audit?
What you're suggesting is making the draft public before the SAU sees it? Or are you saying provide it to the SAU as a draft and also public? Because remember, anything the withdrawal committee is looking at has to be a public document.
That's fine. It's draft, still in draft form.
I am not sure, why does everything, I mean, we've looked at some other stuff that we've said we didn't want put up publicly until we had a chance to kind of go through it and vet it out more.
Well, I guess. It just seems that this is the SAU's audit. They should be looking at it first.
No, I agree, that's why I said if we were going to not post it publicly on the SAU site, but just have it for the committee to review and hand back, if we could somehow make it available to this board in that same format with the understanding that it is a draft and it's not been publicly accepted yet.
Okay, so would that be acceptable to the board? Is to
I want to
have-
make it a motion and just.
Okay, make it a
I'm going to
motion.
make it a motion that we release the 2018 audit,
Draft.
which is in draft form, that we currently have minus the actuarial reports. And that's something that we already have already, Jeff, that basically,
Yeah, I should have that tomorrow.
okay, just some final stuff, okay.
Yep.
So in the next couple of days, it would come on out.
Released to whom?
Released to whom?
Released to the public as draft one, minus the actuarial tables. I mean, if you're releasing it to this board, and we're gonna hand it over, it's gonna become a public document anyway, so why not just say what it is? It's a public document.
need a second, please, before you.
We need a
into the
second.
discussion?
I will second for discussion. I like your idea, Sean, but I think the key thing that committee's looking for is what's holding it up. So if a draft gets issued that includes that, and this board, for whatever reason, is unable to meet in June, I'd be in favor of releasing something that came through Campo's office. It's not like this board is coming up with a draft. So what you guys looking for a planning document is the bottom line.
Yes, we are.
So, if our accounting firm is coming up with a draft, apparently that's all that's holding it up right now, is what they're working on.
Correct.
So, there's nothing they're working on that this board is gonna change,
So,
that's for
Brian, you're
sure.
looking for Sean to add to his motion the draft that includes the actuarial data.
Correct. I would like to
entire
see,
draft.
I would like to see Campo's firm complete their work.
Do you want
'Cause-
to amend
'cause
your
I've
motion?
never seen,
I'm okay
I've
with
never
that.
sat on a board that we alter an auditor's report.
Right.
So then, just so I understand this is going to be, is that when Plaza issues their,
They're gonna issue a draft, let them issue a draft.
the draft, we're just already, by this motion, if it passes, we're automatically adopting that and.
No, I'm not saying to adopt it. I'm saying when there's a draft, at least that committee, which is just a planning committee by design, can do some work. Then whenever this board convenes, they can approve it.
Brian is just saying that on your motion, you said the audit. We need the audit with the actuarial data.
Right, that's a real audit.
That's all.
But once you get that, you have the complete report.
Might be in draft, it might just be in draft
It would
format.
still be in draft, because if
We
the
haven't
SAU
accepted
doesn't,
it.
if the SAU doesn't meet, then it's still in draft, Dr. Metzler.
This is why it's dangerous. There are significant changes from a draft to a final document. I don't think it would be smart to be planning with something that could face significant changes from a draft to a final copy. I'm not a business administrator, I'm certainly not a CPA, but I know every year there's major changes from a draft to a final copy with our audits in all three entities, right? They might make assumptions, or they may have things in there that are not necessarily accurate. We have to verify and validate that, then they go back and write the final copy. And there are changes every single year, and you could ask Mr. Dowder or anybody else that's done this. That's why it's dangerous. How could we
Right.
plan with something that's not
But
final?
those changes haven't come from the board.
No, the changes, they send the draft,
They'll
and
send
we have
us-
to go through the draft.
And they'll go through Jeff's office.
Yeah, so if they make mistakes on some of
Okay.
the, or if they make
Well,
assumptions that aren't accurate about actuaries.
That's fine, so I guess I personally would have no trouble if they have come up with a draft, Jeff's office gets to review it and this kind of stuff, and within a timely 3, 5, 6, 7 business days. So I'm thinking, just in case, for whatever reason, there is no meeting in June by the SAU board, so that won't prevent you people from doing your work. That's what I'm looking at, to give Jeff some time to review a draft.
I think, if I may?
Yes.
I think you'd be able to get 8 people together to have a meeting to
Well,
approve a final copy.
I'm around, but it's like, I can only speak for myself.
All right. So there's a motion and a second on the floor. I personally am probably going to vote against the motion because the withdrawal committee needs the draft that includes the actuary data, so.
Then I will withdraw my motion.
Brian, do you want to withdraw your second?
I'll try my second, sure.
Okay. Is there any more discussion in regards to the audit? We will be sending something out to the board regarding a meeting in June. And you're confident that the actuary data will be that the audit will be complete by what date?
By early next week is what I'm told. I think that there's a remote chance I may be able to have the data in the report for Thursday.
No, well, that's, okay. All right. If you can have it for Thursday, that's great. If not, we'll send something out in terms of another date for the SAU to meet to approve the audit. Okay. Any other questions on audit report? Moving on to number 7, policy review process. Currently, and this was pointed out, I think, in an audit in the past, there's no process for reviewing and updating SAU board policies. And part of the issue I know Timberlane had last year was, there was a policy that said, a special meeting may be called by one of the boards. I know some members of our board are interested in changing that policy. Another policy that I've looked at in depth is the comp time policy. I have talked to Attorney Broth about this. It's a fairly new policy, and it came out of an audit report that basically stated that you're giving comp time, but you have no policy or procedure for this. So this policy was revised in October 2017. My understanding is that paid comp time is not a best practice, and I would like this board to take a look at that. It also gives, in terms of, for the Timberlane members, should the board be looking at withdrawal, you can have some liabilities there of comp time that is being held but not yet paid. So is there a question, any questions or comments on that? If we are going to revise that particular policy, I feel it should be done using, with attorney, using Attorney Broth to make those changes, to make sure that it's contractually sound in terms of the policy.
I would agree with that. I also think that we should, the amounts that we've paid in this policy, I've seen these going through the check manifest going for, in the last 4 or 5 months, there's been about an enormous amount of cash out of that policy. And if the numbers are correct, I believe it's probably close to $50,000, if not more than that. That's a lot of money in only 2 years.
And I think, hang on, Mr. Dow, at the withdrawal committee, did you mention that there were still some compensatory time that is owed but not yet paid? Do you have any value on that?
There is, I don't have that with me at the moment.
Is it roughly 50, 100,000?
I don't think it's that much.
Okay,
Yeah, I
Is-
don't think it'd be that much.
okay. Mrs. Sherman?
Well, when I saw this agenda item, I thought you were discussing other policies as well, a policy review process, not just discuss openly whether we spent $50,000 or not. That we should have a policy subcommittee on this SAU. I've said that for a number of years since I've been involved. We've had ad hoc subcommittees, that, the one you're referring to, well, that was an ad hoc committee. I was not part of that. But I don't know why we wouldn't try to establish a subcommittee to look at policies, and that one would be one of the ones you could certainly review, get advice if you need it. But to discuss it just off the top of our head with someone who's looked at the manifest and others who have not seen the manifest, I think is inappropriate.
Okay. So any thought, Mrs. Silver?
Not to that specific policy, but I know last year there was another policy, I don't remember which one it was off the top of my head now, that I did express some concern about, that I thought needed to be looked at, relative to the timeline of reviewing contracts, and it didn't really line up with the contract language of SAU employee contracts. I don't recall which one it was.
That policy is on employee contracts, and it states that employee contracts should be renewed on an annual basis at the spring meeting, correct? I can't remember the policy letters, but the issue here is that we have multi-year contracts that require a 1-year notice should they not be renewed. So the issue there is that you'd have to renew them or issue non-renewal well in advance of that spring meeting, or else the contract would automatically renew. Does that, everybody
Right.
follow that? That's that policy. Joy.
Okay, I think, so it looks to me like you brought up three
Yes.
three,
3 different policies. We've just discussed 3. Yeah.
yeah, in very general terms, so I agree with Sue. It seems to me like we need either a subcommittee or something, so the board is looking at what they're doing, 1, 2, or 3, 4 policies, so versus, I'm glad you brought it up, because it's obviously that there is some issues, but I agree with Sue that we should have a group that addresses this, and because
All right.
it clearly will be a 30 to 45-minute talking point at an SAU meeting, so.
Are there any volunteers? Mrs. Schumer, you volunteering? Thank
Well,
you.
since I suggested it, I'll happily volunteer, but there should be Hampstead people as well.
Any volunteers from Hampstead?
I'll do it. I'll work with Sue.
Okay.
How big do you want this committee?
I don't think it needs to be a huge committee. I mean, in the past, from reading SAU minutes, I know you said there was a subcommittee, but I did not see that. I just saw that individual people were bringing policies forward.
I believe there was an ad hoc committee.
That. Ms. Parnell.
Oh, I'm not sure how Timberlane does their policy review. I know for Hampstead, when we do it within our district, we have a couple of board members. We have administrators as well. To me, that would mean it would be appropriate to have at least one administrator on the committee as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it should be so, Timberlane's, of course, the same way. Caitlin, I think it should be a similar committee and, not just cherry pick those three, but probably a look at numerous policies that probably haven't been updated or, revised, and there's things that change. It's just like your policies, we revise all the time, or we drop them off, or we change them.
Okay, so we have one from Hampstead, one from Timberlane.
I'll join it as well. If the-
Sean wants to join in, do another Hampstead?
What time would that be?
That would be up to,
Of times?
That obviously affects
Yeah, we'll-
availability. If we're
Right.
talking about
I
in the
guess
middle
we'll
of the
discuss
day or
that
if we're
later,
talking about
as
a
far as
meeting.
yeah, I guess
Oh,
that,
it'd be
that,
an evening one, and I think we can,
it'd probably be in the evening. Okay,
Might be able to do 6 to 7 before the SAU meeting, or.
So we'll
whenever.
talk, I mean, just,
okay. So is there another volunteer from Hampstead?
yeah, I'll join in.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks,
Mr.
Jason.
Yar.
So that would be fair.
And then we'll request a representative from the SAU, Dr. Metzler. So who will take the lead, who wants to take the lead on setting up the time for the committee?
I will,
Sue?
sure, if you,
Okay, thanks.
I'd be happy to.
So Mrs. Belcher, can you work with Mrs. Sherman to figure out when that committee will meet?
Be happy to.
There aren't that many, there are only, I think, about 20 SAU policies. I was looking at them
Surprised if
earlier
there's even that
today.
many.
What?
Surprised if there's even that many.
Yeah, I don't even think
No,
there's that many.
Yeah,
So,
in that ballpark.
okay, thank you.
The only request I'd ask is, if there is more than 3, just prioritize what we want, because if there's 20, what are the important ones? If there's those 3, if there's anything else, let us know, because in an hour or whatever, we wouldn't be able to get through 20. Just let us know.
Or we could look at these particular 3 that have been cherry-picked out and then see if there's others that deserve our attention as well. I think globally, so there's gotta be other things we wanna be concerned about as an
Yep.
SAU.
Agreed.
Mrs. Silva?
One of the things Timberlane has moved to, and I don't know if those 3 policies reflect any others, but if we look at one policy that references another one and another one, we try and pull all of those together and do them all at once, so that as you're updating one, you're updating the other ones that go along with it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
I think the only final piece, and you made reference to it earlier, that you may require some legal help with some of these. Could whoever's gonna chair if Sue's gonna chair, to have her work, or
Yep.
with Attorney Brock.
Sure, if that's what you're asking me to do, I'll do it. If you don't want somebody else, have somebody else.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's fine. Okay, that's it. On policy review, assistant treasurer, do we, Mr. Dow, do you have an update on this vacancy? Have we,
I believe we have had one applicant for the position. Kathy, am I correct? Was it on that, or was it for Timberlane
No.
treasurer?
No, it's for the Timberlane.
Timberlane treasurer.
So nobody for the
notices-
assistant.
Yeah.
This is went out on website. They went out to each of the 2 districts.
okay,
So the treasurer, oh,
Mrs. Sherman?
sorry. So the treasurer for the SAU is the Hampstead treasurer. So who does Hampstead use? Do they have an assistant treasurer in Hampstead?
You do?
I do?
Yeah.
Yes, we do. Oh, we did vote on that a couple of meetings ago, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
We do.
Could we reach out and ask if that person would be interested in helping us out?
Sure. Do some personal
Assistant's
outreach.
job isn't, it's just a backup to the, if things fall apart.
Okay. All right, so we'll do that, and I guess we can just keep it posted. Hopefully somebody will apply for it. Mr. Dell, what's the stipend for the assistant treasurer, do you know?
I want to say like $100, something like that.
How much?
Not a lot, like $100 or something.
$100,
yeah.
okay. Well, I don't think we'll have a lot of people knocking down the door. Okay,
Well, but, you know, it's always incidental to another, so it's, you
Right.
know, I wouldn't expect anyone to be volunteering for $100, but if they're serving as treasurer, assistant treasurer of either district, it's just supplemental, right?
right, okay. Moving on to the Primex property and liability coverage cap. I think probably both, I know Timberlane has discussed this, have you discussed it? SAU 55 is being offered the same 7% coverage cap as Timberlane and Hampstead. So I think we're looking for a motion to approve this, so that I can sign the contract for this on behalf of the board. Is that correct, Mrs. Belcher?
It is, and I think there may be a statement that needs to be, is that correct, Jeff?
Correct, yeah.
There's a statement that should be authorized by the board or the chair, that you are in agreement to a resolution.
The resolution is on
The
the
front page.
fourth page.
Just ask a question about that.
I might have
Well,
yours.
kind of there too. That should be the resolution right there. I can see it.
It's on the back.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, for Kim, it will be the front, because
It's on the
hers-
front.
Oh,
I was-
okay.
I'm
I gave her the
looking at
signature
that.
side.
Okay. Do we need to read this out loud, or is everybody's aware of it? It's on the back? It's the resolution. Jen, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just, so, we had a discussion about this on the Timberlane board, the 7%, right? And that seemed to be a bit higher than what we had experienced in the past.
Correct.
And then, so Hampstead, were you guys 7% as well? Yeah, so, so all three of us were that same 7%?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Okay. So is there a motion to have the chair sign on behalf of the board to accept the offer of the New Hampshire Public Risk Management Exchange Primex to enter into its property and liability contribution assurance program?
So made.
Second.
Mr. O'Neill makes the motion, Mrs. Silva seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. So we're sitting at 12.
Thank you.
Yes.
The point of reference moving forward, and we've had some talk about signatures, and you were gonna sign, Brian was gonna sign, and one Hampstead person was gonna sign. Anytime that we have something only one person's gonna sign, is it the expectation that we'll bring it forward like this at a meeting, and then you'll ask? Or is that,
I would think so.
because, yeah, so whether it's a contract, any instrument, anything that comes out from the board, that way? Okay, so that's the expectation, finances, everything, okay.
I mean, there are two other signature blocks on here if Mrs. Parnell and Mr. Boyle wants to sign it.
I believe there's a signature in two places as well.
Oh, there's
I think
signature in
that
two
action you just
places.
took is an action beyond the action that you took, so I think you're good. I just wanted to make it clear
Right.
that every time we need to do that, we will do that, so.
Can I ask a
Jen?
question about that?
Yep.
So everything would have to come before, so if anything comes up in the summer that the SAU needs signed, you're saying we should have a meeting to do that, even though we had that motion for the chair, the vice chair, and a Hampstead rep to sign,
Well,
and you just,
I'm not recommending that we meet I'm just trying to make sure that we get it right, whatever, because there's always that misunderstanding, like, how come there's only one, how come there was three, how come there's two? So, if there's some sort of an emergency, it's an emergency, and I guess we'll have to touch base with the chair and we'll have to figure out, but I think we have most documents for at the SAU level, I think are signed,
Yeah.
right?
I
And there's
believe
not
so,
a
yeah.
lot of signatures here, there's a
Right.
lot with Timberlane and Hampstead, but not as much at the SAU level,
right.
so.
Just so that the board had said for the chair, the vice chair, and a Hampstead representative, that would be okay if all three. Perfect.
Right.
So if it was an emergency, would this make sense for practice would be to have you, Brian, and one Hampstead member come in, and then you just tell the board what you signed?
Sure.
Hampstead, we're gonna sign everything. You can sign it, Jen.
And then we just send it out and say, this is what we're signing. Yeah.
Spread
Or we
the
could just
wealth.
keep passing it down.
Spread the wealth.
All right. Okay, moving on. There was a discussion at the April 15th board meeting where we wanted to discuss or review copies of all the SAU professional contracts and the typical letter of agreement. So in your packet, and I think this was in the packet last time, you'll see the contracts and/or letters of agreement. for all the SAU personnel. One thing that came up last year with regards to contracts was that all contracts had to be renewed annually.
We review them annually, we don't renew them annually. You get a salary adjustment, it's different than a renewed contract. We review them, we don't renew them. I know it sounds like semantics, but that's when their salary gets adjusted, there's a cover page that goes on the contract. The length of the contract doesn't change, it's just the compensation for that particular year.
Well, new 3-year contracts were signed in June of 2017. There were people in the second year of their 3-year contract, and a new contract was signed in June of 2018. So to say that we don't issue new contracts,
Not every year, no.
well, we did
did
it in
last-
2017, and we did it in 2018.
But
So
I've been
why
here
are we doing it differently this year?
Well, it's not differently. In my 7 years here, there have been years where there haven't been any other than, well, let me rephrase that. There have been years where, last year was to get everybody on the same cycle. So they all end at the same time. There were people ending at different times, so we got them all in the same cycle. We reviewed them. Every single year, you review the salary conditions for the next year. The contract doesn't necessarily change.
Who was on a different cycle? Because I looked at those contracts in 2017, and they all appeared to have the same end date. Who was on a different cycle?
I don't know off the top of my head. I was under the impression, no, I don't know off the top of my head.
So, were they, or you're,
I believe they were. I believe they weren't all in the same cycle. But I could be wrong, but I believe they were.
Jen, did you have a question?
No, I was just looking at the wrong sheet. That's okay.
Dr. Wilson's may have been different than the other professional employees.
So these are all the current contracts, but we should also have a predecessor to all this, because by law, we have to keep contracts for, I know, at least a minimum of 10 years, if not longer than that.
We haven't, but.
So we could get a copy of the predecessor to each one of these contracts, and
I do have them right here. I have
Okay.
the 2017 contracts here. That's what I'm looking at. You see the end dates.
So you have them, but we don't, Kim. You have a copy, but we don't have a copy.
Right, well,
We have the
because
current
I-
ones, you have the
I had
previous
looked
ones.
at, yeah, right. And that wasn't asked for in the packet. I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
had them from some other, I was looking back at contracts.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So-
While you're
Well,
verifying.
I mean, I have the HR contract, seem to have the same ending date as the CFO's contract. I can't tell on the assistant superintendent contract.
And I know this is just SAU business, and I know that this is just an SAU building, but the Timberlane contracts were also, they're all the same now. They all have the same end date, all the people in this building. So I may be mixing apples and oranges. I don't think so. I'm pretty sure that Dr. Wilson's was different, but I could be wrong about that. I know there was different beginning and end dates, and so some discussion about review. There was also, I think, some debate, we talked about, it wasn't just the salary adjustments, there was some language changes in here. And don't ask me, that there were, it was because they worked through the, through John Woodson, they changed some language in the contracts. And so I think there's a consistent language that you'll see, but those were worked with Attorney Shaughnessy, to make sure that the language was consistent. So if you really look at the contracts that you have, the old ones and the new ones, and you go word for word, you'll notice some language. I don't think it's significant, but there's some language change. But that was all attorney recommendation, that was not.
Okay.
Sheila, Kim, Sheila.
Yep.
I'm a little, Mr. Gary is not included in this, because he's an SAU employee, correct?
The
Is it
SAU
missing?
board is not responsible for the coordinator of transportation or the facilities director. You're responsible for the superintendent, assistant superintendent, HR director, and business administrator only.
So is
I think-
Mr.,
Yes, but he's an SAU employee. You have all of them. You have the
Okay.
letters of agreement.
I did put his in there, didn't
It's not in here, that's why I'm
Not in
asking.
You
ours.
should have it. But it's just that, they're in a different category than the professional staff.
No, I understand that, but I have,
so,
These are just the four that we
Right.
You have all
administer.
the- You should have the letters of agreement from all the employees
I?
and the
Yeah, I
6
missed it.
contracts.
I don't think we have,
Is it, then that is an error on my part?
Yeah,
It
it's-
was not purposeful?
Good catch. I didn't miss it.
no, I see everybody else, I just don't see that one, that's the only one I don't see.
Transportation.
That I, yes, and,
Right, so there'd be two that are not in his
Two.
packet. Yep,
You're missing two, you're missing Sandy's too?
we are. Yep, that's my mistake. Yep, it was not intentional.
didn't say it was, just asking if they were, yeah.
are those contracts or are they letters of agreement?
Their contracts.
They're contracts.
Their contracts.
And-
Yeah, their
Oh,
contracts.
I think the SAU asked for, the board asked for all 14 contracts, so we need to get those contracts. Another question was, there, okay, thanks.
Does he have access to the, it's all locked up? Oh, okay, okay, got it.
All right, and board members had asked for the letters of agreement. Are there questions on any of these contracts or letters of agreement? Now, my understanding is that letters of agreement are
1 year only, right?
I mean,
for 1 year
statement of
only.
employment,
1 year only,
that-
correct?
1 year only. But now we have contracts that are running, a couple of them are running for 3 years. Well, the CFO has a 3-year contract, all right? Superintendent's contract runs till 2022, and HR contract runs till 2021. Director of HR.
Can I clarify that?
Yep.
That's not a new practice. Like, when I got here, everybody had multiple, those people had multiple year
I-
contracts.
I'm not saying it's a new practice,
I didn't want people to think we just gave 3-year contracts when people had.
I think what you're trying to do is distinguish the difference between these that are 1 year and
Right.
these that are multiple year, correct?
Right.
Okay. But
And
these-
we have contracts here that the SAU board signs, and now we have contracts that Dr. Metzler signs. Is that correct? So you're signing contracts
The letters
for,
of agreement, yeah, those are.
Statement of
So-
employment, it's called.
Statement of.
there's no one other than the CFO, yourself, and the Director of Human Resources that has a multi-year contract.
Assistant.
The assistant.
Assistant
Well,
super.
well,
No, all 6, the 4 professional staff and the 2 in the category slightly below that.
and who,
Sandy and Tom,
so those two people have multi-year contracts
correct.
that you sign.
That I signed, yes, correct.
I think it's important that the board be aware of this, at least the members of the Timberline Board, as they look at withdrawal, what multi-year contracts are out there. Especially multi-year contracts that are not within the purview of the SAU board.
Right. I think, by policy, and I know you're talking about the 4 professional staff that are purview of the SAU board. The other employees, including the letters of agreement and the 2 other contracts, technically are, because you fix salaries in the fall, and then you provide a merit pool. So, we don't go above and beyond what you approved in the fall. What's different practice now than 5, 6, 7 years ago, in the past, whatever you fixed in the fall, that was their salary for July 1, regardless of how their performance was during the year. So then they changed, and they said, do the evaluations in May and June, and then look at the 3% pool and distribute that amongst the employees in the building, whether they're on a letter of agreement or on a multi-year contract, and you distribute that 3% based on the salaries and their job performance. That was just a little bit different, but you still really fix the salaries, you're fixing the merit pool. If you were to fix the salaries in the fall, the evaluations would really wouldn't have any relevance in terms of their compensation for July 1. They changed the evaluation process, and the evaluation process that you're doing now used to take place in September and October, so they changed, that seems to make more sense. But for every time we fix, then there's a new issue, like, oh, I just got elected in March, I don't really know the employees, and now I'm evaluating them, which is different than the fall, but the timing is better. And then we have the issue like we talked about with goals. Wait a minute, we're writing goals and we're approving them in October, we're starting in July. So there's a lot of pieces that we're trying to align and have make sense. But there's been some changes over the last few years that I think are better for business and the practice in which we do, but they're not necessarily, I think they're still under the purview of the board, primarily because you fixed the salaries in the fall. If there was nothing in the fall and you just said pay them whatever you want, that would be different. But I think you really have drawn some pretty tight lines around what we can and can't do in the spring.
Silva?
I understand what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying about fixing the salaries when we do the budget. That is how we do it. The concern, I think, is looking forward for that withdrawal committee is having ongoing multi-year contracts versus year to year when we're looking at that pro forma budget and asking, what does that look like if we withdraw in 2019 versus 2020 versus 2021? And some of those numbers do hinge on those multi-year contracts. So I think the point is to try and, at this point, until we know what direction we're going in, really limit those multi-year contracts as best we can.
So, one second, Dr. Metzler. I want to throw a question to Attorney Broth. So would it be within the board's purview to, I guess, direct the superintendent to only sign contracts if the board is in agreement with those contracts? I'm looking at this more from, well, I guess that's the question. Is it within the board's purview? Because as Mrs. Silva said, Timberlane's board is concerned about multi-year contracts.
It would be within the board's purview to request the superintendent not to enter into multi-year agreements or to extend existing multi-year agreements without the SAU board's knowledge and consent.
Mr. Boyle.
I just went through these things very briefly, but it looks like the bulk of these are already extended through June 2021.
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay. So, that they are valid contracts, so to me, here we are in May of 2019, so I think it'd be wise for the board to do a vote like that, because it doesn't affect anyone until 2022, because everyone's all set until 2021. Everyone's on.
Well, are you making that motion?
I will make a motion that we should not extend any contracts without board approval.
Or enter into any new multi-year contracts?
Without.
Well,
yes,
you need,
without.
you,
I will make a motion not to extend any SEU contracts or make additional employment contracts or leisure agreement without board approval.
I'm confused.
No,
That doesn't make sense to me.
That would be saying.
Can you help me with that?
People-
Well, in other words, I'm trying to
Wait,
phrase
wait,
what you've
Brian,
got right now.
wait, Jen, do you want to,
I'll make the motion.
why don't,
Go for it.
To direct the superintendent not to enter into multi-year or extend multi-year agreements without board consent.
Okay.
That what you said, Mr. Prof? Did
is that what you
did
said?
I capture that? Okay.
Can you do that one more time for me, Jen? Thank you.
Direct the superintendent not to enter into multi-year or extend multi-year agreements without board consent.
Can we put in there existing or extend existing multi-year contract? I think that's what he was referring to. The ones that are already,
You can't touch them.
I would
Those
say any
legit.
contract that you would want, because you don't want to create a new liability.
Sorry, wait. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second
Second.
to that motion? Mr. O'Neill seconds that motion. Now let's move to discussion. Dr. Metzler?
So I think, and Sheila started to say this, now, we got three categories really, right? So you have the professional staff that we require 3 signatures. We have those 2 kind of hybrid positions, which is the transportation coordinator and the facilities director, which you're asking, and the spirit of the motion is, please don't enter in a new agreement, let them work on the agreement that they're on, and then we'll address that. And then we have the one-year letters of agreement, which is it safe for me to assume that you're okay with me extending those one-year letters of agreement for July 1 with the current staff in the building?
Yes, the one-year letters of agreement.
Sure.
I think
So,
the
are you
spirit
gonna
of the
want to-
motion is that we will not enter
Multi-year.
into any new multi-year contracts or renew any multi-year contracts. Extend any multi-year contracts
Without board approval.
without board approval.
Yeah, the motion was enter into multi-year or extend multi-year. Not, I understand the year by year that we have employees, their contracts are up, and of course, you know, we don't want them to feel like they're not gonna have a job come July 1, and I'm sure you're probably already working on those contracts for a year, so,
Those letters of agreement.
yeah, we certainly
Within the
would want them
confines
to
of the
feel
budget
like,
that You approve.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's not, the intent of that is not to,
Not taking, I see Kim's point, there's two people that are kind of out there that aren't covered with what we're currently doing. It's-
Well,
It is,
not,
with this motion it is, but they're not.
with this motion it is.
It wasn't covered based on current three-signature policies. And you could look at that policy and add those two positions at some point to the,
Well, that's
That's
another
another
policy, I
strategy.
think.
Add that one to the line.
who's taking notes?
You got it?
Global.
All right, so we'll wait till those contracts get passed around before we vote on the motion. Mrs. Parnell, did you?
No,
saw
I think
some.
I needed clarification on something, but I think I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay.
Read back the motion.
Right, we'll wait till Mrs. Belcher gets back to her seat. Thank you for grabbing, Mr. Sorry, Mrs. Belcher, is there any discussion on these contracts, or do you want, could you read back the last
Sure.
motion, please?
The motion was made by Mrs. Silver, and that was to direct the superintendent to not enter into any new multi-year contracts or extend multi-year contracts without board consent. That was seconded by Mr. O'Neill.
Is there any further discussion on the motion? All in favor?
6, 7, that's one
Six. I think we have 6 Timberlane, 1 Hampstead. All opposed? 2 Timberlane, 3 Hampstead. I haven't,
Are you missing anyone for an extension?
no, there are no abstentions.
Right?
Are we gonna calculate this out here? I don't even have my cheat sheet.
I'll give you mine,
In the minutes.
We have, tonight, it's, Timberlane is 27.06 per member, and Hampstead is 20.70 per vote.
So we have 27.06 times 6. Plus And Hampstead is, and they have 4, so they got
20.7.
plus 20.7. So I'm getting 183.06,
Yep.
yes.
I'm getting 116.22.
So the motion passes. There any more discussion on the staff contracts? Okay. Moving on to the evaluation of the superintendent, part 1. This is typically done in non-public under 91A:3, 2C. There'll be a motion to move to non-public.
So made.
Mr. O'Neill makes a motion, Mrs. Silva seconds. Ms. Belcher, could you call the roll, please?
Under C, you said is correct?
Yes.
Mr. Boyle?
Yes.
Mr. Doobie?
Yes.
Dr. Farah?
Yes.
Mr. Giard?
Yes.
Ms. Slows?
Yes.
Mrs. Mockamer?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mrs. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
You're in at 8:08. Shut off the camera.
Just wait just a second. Need to wait. Just wait till the camera's off.
We're on.
Oh, okay.
My goodness.
All right, so we're resuming a public session at 10:35 PM. Two motions that were made in non-public that I will relate is that the SAU board made a motion to release to the chair and vice chair the superintendent evaluation letters for 2017 and 2018. And that was approved 12-0. There was another motion to approve and accept the board's written evaluations of the superintendent, and that passed 12-0. We will not be meeting on May 23rd. There will be, we'll ask Mrs. Belcher to poll the board for a meeting in June to review and accept the SAU55 audit and also to discuss the assistant superintendent search. Anything else to add? Anybody? Okay, we'll adjourn at 10:36 PM. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So. Oh my goodness. Got these things to give back.
Not gonna
That's
do
what
the
I call my
minutes?
son.
Did we
Oh
not
my goodness, is he
Do
cute.
what?
Seal the minutes.
seal the minutes?
Didn't you just do that?
Hold on.
We just did
Hold.
Yes, we,
Okay, sorry, everybody has to come back.
Calls back to order.
We're adjourning.
We're adjourning.
Sorry, Sue, you should have yelled at me sooner.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so we need a motion to seal the non-public minutes.
So moved. Oh, second.
Mrs. Silver makes the motion, Mr. Doobie seconds.
Sean, all right, okay, so now we're saying it's who?
Kathy's on it.
Yep.
Thank you.
And the reason is the divulgence of information would likely
Right.
adversely affect yada yada, okay?
Yes.
Thank you, Kathy.
And you all voted to seal it. Shall we go through this for the purposes of the record?
Please.
Mr. Boyle?
Yes.
Mr. Doobie?
Yes.
Dr. Farah?
Yes.
Mr. Giard?
Yes.
Ms. Slows?
Yes.
Mrs. Mockamer?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mrs. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
And Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
How can we adjourn?
Now you may adjourn.
Again? Can adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn again at 10:37.
And all
Good
this is
night.
back.